I hope you're ready, because in case you haven't already been bored to death, it's time for the next episode. So, for our next installment, we find ourselves leaving Cairns, taking a slight break from the car trouble, and while we're still up in that North Queensland area, we managed to road cruise a Death Adder, which is pretty remarkable. I've had tons of success with Death Adders since being here in Australia, with a whopping around 12 found now, over one per month I've been here. But they're meant to be a pretty rare find, so it's still something to remember to appreciate when you come across it. What's interesting is up in that area, it's an overlap zone between the northern and the common Death Adder. Some say they're not even separate species, just kind of a gradient of the way they appear. But this one has a little bit more characteristics in the category of the common Death Adder rather than the northern, which I would expect to see it leaning more toward northern in that area. The last individual I found there leaned more toward characteristics of a northern Death Adder. So it was neat to see one that's a bit different and off from that. They're a pretty cool, unique snake. They've convergently evolved with vipers to wind up, well, they look a lot like them and take up kind of their niche in the environment. There aren't actually any vipers here in Australia. The venomous snakes here are lapids. Well, not the only venomous snakes here. There's some venomous colubrids as well, but the main one is the lapid, and they're stronger venoms. And the Death Adder sits and waits as an ambush predator and then strikes its prey similar to the viper does. It even has that fat body and camouflage and the wide jaw and everything. And they have one of, if not the fastest strike of any snake. I've heard it said that it's the fastest, though I haven't looked into the exact numbers, and I don't know that I'm going to believe that, because they convergently evolved of being like a viper. But vipers just through and through are these ambush predator machines that strike like lightning. But they're still so quick that a Death Adder could strike twice in the amount of time it takes somebody to blink at once, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. But enough with me rambling on. Let's dive in and get a look at some of these cuties. Well, at least one. So here we go, the first Death Adder of the trip. You'll notice some flickering from time to time. That's a result of the headlamps we have. They flicker and they're digital, and that doesn't play nicely with the shutter speed of the camera on my phone. At any rate, you may also hear and see some flashes going off from the cameras. That's just the little bit of photography we've got going on of this guy. When you first roll up on them, they tend to do more of their display where they flatten out and have some of the in-between colors in their scales show up more as a way to attempt to deter predators. So if you want to get a picture of that, you've often got to do it quick, because they aren't often too keen on holding on to that display for too long. They'll eventually calm down and just start either trying to get away or just hold really still and rely on crypsis. Crypsis is when an animal attempts to evade detection by just staying very still. It's something reptiles are quite fond of doing. Here you can see where we're touching him with the end of the snake hook, attempting to get him to do more of his defensive posture, flattening out. Looking back at this, I see that these guys are noticeably less vibrant and colorful than the other varieties that we found. And he's off. What did I say about them not putting up with your BS for too long? Now he's just going to start going everywhere, and, well, this is when you realize it's about time to just try to get photographs in a more natural position. Now he's going to pose for us a little bit longer, but yeah, after this point you can't count on it lasting too long. Here's one of the pictures of him I wound up with. If we take a closer look, you can see those eye shields I was talking about. They're the scales right over the eyes. And in some of the others where it's more pronounced on the northern, it can look almost like horns. It's a way you can kind of tell them apart, though it's not a go-to obvious, it is this or that type of factor. But it is a good little indicator. So the bigger eye shields indicate kind of more of a possibility of being a true northern, and less lean a little bit more back toward it being a common. Here's an example of what you'd expect on a little bit more of a typical looking common. This still isn't completely what you'd think of as a normal common, though you can see how much smoother those eye shields are on this guy, and less pronounced. This guy's from farther south in Queensland and more of the Townsville area, which is still an overlapping region between the northern and common, where you'll see a spectrum of these different characteristics. Here's the first one I found in the Cairns area, as an example of what you'd expect to see on more of a typical northern. You can see how much more pronounced his eye shields are, where they appear almost more like little horns. As well as across the rest of his body, he has more vibrant coloring, and then underneath his chin he has that really noticeable contrast between the white and the black. And then you can also see the caudal lure there. That's a pretty cool little mechanism they have, and they use it for attracting prey. Here's an up-close picture of the caudal lure. It's pretty cool in action, because they don't just kind of randomly twitch it and move it around a little bit like some animals do to attract prey. But rather, they make it look uncannily like a grub, almost like it's just stuck in the rear end of them, moving it all around while keeping the rest of their body firmly motionless. What do you think this is? Random rattle off whatever you can think of about Death Adder's episode? Well, yeah, it's about what I was making of it, yeah, and it was going pretty well. No, this is a series documenting a travel, and you promised them misadventures. So get back to the misadventures. But Death Adders, they're great. I understand they're great, but again, another episode. Okay? Wasn't there some underground stuff? Yeah, there was some splunking, and splunking is pretty great. You guys want to see some splunking? Yeah, they want to see some splunking. You might want to explain what splunking is first, though. Fine. Splunking is the name given to cave exploring. It's an equally awesome name for an equally awesome thing to go do. And on this trip, we managed to get down to a little bit of it, really. Not as in depth as I would have liked, but there were some decent sized caves that we were able to get down into and explore alone. And to be honest, it was a pretty good time. So we're going splunking. Found some caves.
As you come down, look to the right in that deep crevice.
I'm gonna try to get your way quick, Peter. Sorry. I'm gonna get a video of you coming in.
Oh. Am I going to go around you?
No, I'm just gonna crawl back further. I was just gonna get you starting to go in.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not wind up getting that footage.
Holy shit, I cannot believe this.
Trying to negotiate our way down into these caves was quite the little feat. Especially for me, trying to carry a plethora of camera gear and get a proper point of view of the entry. So I'm in this cave. My other battery just died. There's a bat right up there. Check it out. Let's see if we can zoom in on him a little bit. Oh, the dust in here is just horrid. With this flash being right in front of it. Let's see. A little flickery, but there you go. It's flickery again for the same reason as well. Why else see it being flickery all the time when I try to use my headlamp and film with my phone with the shutter speed. But it provides a good enough view of this little guy. And you can see his little ears just going a million miles an hour, presumably trying his hardest to echolocate and figure out just what the hell's going on down here with us walking around. We spent a fair amount of time exploring the cave and wound up taking different pictures of ourselves just hanging out. And the pictures taken this way with the angled flash do a better job of really showing you the depth and colors of the cave and how interesting it really was. The things just filmed with the flash going straight forward tend to look overly flat and not really convey the fullness of the way this place looked. I had intended to use more of the footage gained from my actual DSLR camera, but all in all I wind up rarely using any of that. The footage doesn't really look much any better than what I get on my phone, besides from the fact that I can get like more angled light, but I could do that on my phone too if I worked harder at it.
so it becomes not worth it that often anyhow.
Well, time to leave the cave. Camera battery's dead. Can't get any more useful shots. And I left my gimbal, so it's shaky cam time.
In this moment, I was trying to illustrate two things. One being just how dark the cave is until you turn on the lights. Really, it's the most profound experience of darkness I've ever been in. And hell, you feel like there's some light leak in there because if you turn off the lights and open your eyes, you feel like you can kind of see the walls of the cave around you. But in reality, you can't. Your brain's just making it up based on where it thinks the walls were when your eyes were open. It's a pretty trippy experience.
I'd also wanted to show how the light just pops up as you start to walk out and see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I didn't wind up really getting an effective shot for that until here at the end, and well, by then, sure, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but the whole tunnel's kind of lit up in itself. So I just began to make my way out of the cave, and you can look out, and so different, so bright out there in contrast with the environment we have inside here. And on my way out, there was this cute little skink just hanging out. And this guy is a different color than the last random skink that I focused on to show in a video. And they all have interesting behaviors to see, and some have more and less iridescence than others. A lot of them are the rainbow or the sunset skinks, and on some of them, the colors have been striking enough that it dawns on me, oh yeah, that's why it's called a rainbow skink, because they'll be really breathtaking, though the majority of the ones you see are very plain in appearance. Well, I guess we'll have to say goodbye to this little skink for now, but more wonders await. Here's a molted exoskeleton from a spider that I found in one of the caves. There really wasn't as much life down in the caves as I was expecting or hoping for. Figured maybe we'd find some pythons or something, but didn't even see a whole lot of bugs, though I did see a few spiders. And here's the molt of one of them. A lot of the ones in this area have this interesting habit of leaving their molt just hanging from different precarious positions. It's quite interesting to look at. Makes for some cool macro photos. Here's another part of the cave that's much more sparkly. In one of the bigger caves that we went into, there's a big entrance section as well that you'll see later that I may have a picture of, or maybe I didn't. Hell if I know. Well, I mean, I'm sure I've got a picture, but whether I can be bothered to edit it to insert for this video or not is the real question. Some parts of the cave had very active formations going on. Here you can see where there's actually liquid running down this, and it's an active formation of a stalagmite. And I can't recall if I got it in this video or not, but there's water continuously dripping down on top of this, just plunk, plunk, plunk. And lots of shiny minerals visible as well as the lighting angle changes. On the way in and out of the cave, you are greeted by a rather entertaining warning sign. And then here you can see where the entrance to one of the caves is, where it's more or less straight down. So this just goes to show how you can find animals anywhere. I just wandered off to go take a much needed poop in this currently being renovated little bathroom, and there was a little gecko in there. Speaking of which, you can see at the top where they attempt to ventilate these things, but they're still hot as hell, and you're still just sitting over a hole that turds plummet down. It's not even plumbed properly. So we've gotten out to admire what Martin claims is the coolest tree he's seen in his entire life. We had to backtrack for this.
You see this tree right here? This tree is like what I'm gonna look like with a boulder. You peel like little stuff off of it right here, and like little chunks just come out. You lightly touch it and it falls apart. You wiggle it around and like shit falls off. It's all like red and wrinkly. That's exactly what I'm gonna be like.
Well, I don't know that it's the best tree I've ever seen. Maybe say in the comments what you think. I think we'll call that a wrap for today. Still more adventure to come, but it's a decent leaving off point, though these are definitely getting to be less than a week chronicled per. with information still left out. But, as you can see behind me here, it is the beginning of the wet season in the Northern Territory, and as such it's noisy outside and there's plenty of thunder, so voiceover work isn't super possible right now. I mean, it is, but let's be honest, the quality of my voiceover work's not that great or consistent. There's plenty of background noise, but it's good to keep it to at least kind of a minimum. Make sure to stay tuned for next time, because Peter gets mad at a camera, I get hot, and Martin looks at a map. Stay tuned for the car too, because some say she's never not broken down. Some say she can't get stuck. All I know is she's a pink Land Cruiser. Really though, I know some of these are getting a bit weird at this point. I hope somebody's taken some sort of enjoyment out of this, and I'm hoping to make some more targeted, higher produced stuff later. But I don't know what that'll be. Any rate, as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.